The more the establishment attacks Donald Trump, the stronger he becomes. Why is this? Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that maybe the American people are fucking tired of the establishment and its sanctimonious crap. Let's define the establishment before we begin. For the sake of this conversation, the establishment is the corporate media, career politicians, and celebrities. These three groups have been jerking each other off on the national stage since before I could remember. They are the loudest voices on the tallest podiums of public life, and all three have given rise to a shameless authoritarianism that openly seeks to silence anyone who steps out of an increasingly narrow set of lines. This horrifying current reality can only be understood by looking at the period that preceded it, which I will call the unmasking of the right. So what is the unmasking of the right? It's a period in American life. I think this period could also be referred to as the Daily Show, Jon Stewart, Bill Maher, and Richard Dawkins era, because the careers of all of these thinkers was built on mocking the right on two major points: corruption and religious authoritarianism. On corruption, the right's insistence on cutting the taxes of the wealthy was shown to be of no benefit to the nation at large. Trickle-down economics was shown to be a trickle-down as the rich drinking more wine so that they could urinate on our heads. The conservative members of the Supreme Court essentially legalized political corruption by stating that political money was an extension of free speech. George Bush's war, which gave great wealth to a small number of corporations, was an unmitigated disaster for the nation. The religious authoritarianism of the right was also torn down during this period. Once again, it was Dawkins, Maher, and Stewart who led the charge, forcing women to go through hoops for abortions, despite the fact that unprepared mothers tend to do horrible jobs raising children. The resistance to gay marriage, which would solidify the social status of gay and lesbian people who could not be shamed back into straightness. These two were laid bare. During this unmasking, which, as a freedom advocate who supports both a free market and personal liberty, was essential for the nation, two things happened which now pave the road for the Trump ascendancy during this period. There was something of a silent witch hunt on the left. It started in a very benevolent place. The left sought to disempower bigots who were trying to hold people of certain identities away from things in which these people were skilled. This was anti-meritocratic. Why keep a gay man or a black man out of a position in which that gay or black man, this is just to name a few, for example, could perform great things on behalf of the nation at large? But during this period, something dangerous happened. The left muddied the waters between political positions and the hatred of groups of human beings. There are two obvious examples of this in which the media was complicit. Being concerned with the cheap influx of labor from Mexico is an economic concern, but this was conflated with racial hatred of Hispanics. Being concerned with the ultra-conservative and downright scary sentiments within parts of the Middle East is a concern for liberal society, and yet this was conflated with the hatred of Muslims. But the media also did other things. It quietly marginalized anyone who spoke out about the fact that globalization had turned America's once great manufacturing base into a barren wasteland, which annihilated the economic viability of many of America's cities, including cities like Baltimore and Detroit. When these cities became understandably upset about the fact that their jobs and opportunities had evaporated, and what jobs there were left were having their wages driven into the dirt by the illegal influx of labor from Mexico, The establishment convinced the residents of these cities that it was racism that was to blame for this evaporation of jobs, and that it was social welfare programs which would save the day, rather than the correction of wrong-headed trade policy. For some reason, in their attack on corruption, the left never quite got to taking a serious look at trade. And global free trade was lumped into the rainbow planet, everyone holding hands bullshit of cultural indoctrination. And this conflation of ideas with people led to the left conflating third wave feminism with women and conflating tokenistic policy with minorities. And so the march of illiberal and wrong-headed policies continues on. And every time somebody speaks up, anytime somebody points to the obvious economic concerns, they are immediately slandered by the establishment. We've kept quiet, but resentment builds like the pressure in a sealed container. So how is it that the establishment believes, after all of this, that calling Trump a dangerous racist who is dangerously off the narrative will defeat him? We get it, establishment. Anyone who isn't in your bubble is racist and hates all women. In this bubble, if you deviate too far from the current thinking, you are kicked out. Even Marr and Dawkins are facing an increasing wave of pressure to remove themselves from the stage. Why? Because they criticize the wrong people. And yet the criticism of these thinkers is never held with the same disgust as their criticism of other ideas. And here's a thought. Maybe the establishment has bankrupted itself by inaccurately conflating so many things with racism and sexism that vast swaths of the country have learned not to give one single fuck about your judgments of the situation. So let's hear it, establishment media. What's your plan for the labor surplus in America? The clear savaging we're getting in trade from dishonest players like China, which are intentionally devaluing their own currencies. Tell me what the fucking plan is. Right now. Just do it. Tell me what the fucking plan is, or shut the fuck up. This is Estacar. Like and subscribe. More to come.